It seems that it's always election time around here. We got a midterm election, runoffs, and then there's the city stuff as well for the city of McAllen. Because one of our commissioners, Sebi, Commissioner Place 5 McAllen, bolted to run for State House 41 on the Dem side. Well, we got a seat in McAllen that needs to be filled, and we have three candidates for that. And we get to meet one of them now. Felida Villarreal is in the studio here at KURV, and we're going to get to know her a bit, her background and roots, and why she wants all the stress of being a city commissioner that always has to look at numbers and budgets and financials and all that. And Felida, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me,
All
Mr.
right,
Sanchez.
so tell me about your background, where you grew up, and you're obviously you live in Place 5 in McAllen. So tell me about your background, where you grew up, all that.
Sure. So I was actually born in McAllen, and I've lived most of my life here in McAllen. And I say most of my life because shortly after being born, my parents decided to move to Michigan for job opportunity. And so I did attend my elementary school years in Michigan, but their plan was always to come back because this is home. And so we came back around the time where I started middle school. I attended Cathy Middle School, went on to attend IB Academy on North 10th, and ultimately graduated Sherryland High School and stayed here for my college education. I attended, the local UTPA, went back to get a graduate degree from UTRGV, and started my career here in McAllen, as a matter of fact. My background is accounting, so I started as a finance analyst in McAllen for Telemundo 40. I then went on to work for a local CPA firm here in District 5, Hart and Silva CPAs. And then 6 years ago, I transitioned into the nonprofit sector. So I've now had the privilege of leading a nonprofit organization called Vida that is really focused on empowering residents, individuals across the valley, and helping them achieve a college education.
Tell me more about VIDA, the acronym. What do they do day to day? What do you do?
So it stands for Valley Initiative for Development and Advancement. It was started back in 1995 through the rural empowerment zones with support from a local organizing group called Valley Interface, as well as various industry and community leaders at the time who saw a lot of workforce gaps, a lot of need in the community, and still a need that is, very prominent today. I mean, the reality is that, just 1 in 3 adults in McAllen actually have a college education, and only 1 out of 5 students actually graduate from an institution of higher ed. And so is definitely a lot of personal barriers that impact not only education access, but education completion. And so at Vida, we provide a comprehensive approach, wraparound support services that encompass things like financial aid, scholarships, mentorship, counseling, childcare assistance, transportation assistance, really trying to identify any barrier that is preventing a student from succeeding in college.
Yeah, I could see where a seat at City Hall in McAllen would be most beneficial to try to connect some of the resources for some of the work over at Vida. She's director of Vida. She's a CPA, Felida Villarreal, and she's running for Place 5, City of McAllen. The early vote is on the 20th of April, ends on the 28th, if I remember correctly. And election day is Saturday, May 2nd. And there will be other issues that send people to the polls. For example, McAllen ISD and their bond vote as well, that's coming up in McAllen. So it's always election time around here. McAllen, you need to fill Place 5. Can you describe Place 5, más o menos, just to the best of your ability, the border, south, west, east, all that? What is the border of seat?
Yeah,
Place 5?
so more or less, right? It's the area between 10th and 23rd. It goes up to 29th in some areas, and then from about Dove south up to the expressway.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah.
So it's really the most central part of the city. It covers your downtown, it covers your Mac High area,
Yeah.
a lot of business as well.
And speaking of downtown, you were telling me off air that one of the forums, the candidate forums, I don't know if they're all confirmed, but it's one of those that will be available, will be in downtown at Cine El Rey, and you said it was on April 19th.
Yes,
Cine El Rey.
that
You know
is
what time they
correct.
start there?
I believe it will be starting at 5 p.m. with Meet the Candidates, hour, and then it should be starting, shortly after.
All right. Well, if you are chosen by folks in Place 5. You'll continue being the director over at Vida because they don't pay to be on City Hall. So
Correct.
that's when I was asking at the beginning, why do you want all the aggravation and stress? Because it is long hours, long meetings,
Right.
committee reports, financials, what mercifully you can read. Like most folks in business, and you being CPA, you can read these ledgers and financials and some of the forecasts for that. So tell me why. What is the passion?
Right. So for me, more than anything, it definitely comes from a place of service, right? I see this position not as a title, not as, politics or party, but really an opportunity to serve the people. And so since day one, I've made it very clear on my platform, on my literature, my cell phone number is readily accessible to everyone. And I want to make sure that, the voices of our residents and, these decisions that are impacting their daily lives, that they are represented at the table. And so with my nonprofit work as well, I've seen a lot of alignment in public service. Through my nonprofit work, I've had the privilege to be able to serve on many community-led initiatives. For example, I sit on the Hidalgo County Prosperity Task Force, right, which is a county-wide initiative being led by Judge Cortez to address the complex issue of poverty. I also have the privilege of serving as an ambassador to Rioplex, which is also a phenomenal strategy to rebrand and remarket the region to continue attracting new business development, new industry, and with that attracting better quality jobs. And so that's the same perspective, the same approach that I hope to bring to the city
Well, you just
commission.
mentioned something that is very much front page right now, which is the whole issue of attracting industry and economic development issues in the area. We're looking at uh, wonderful times in the valley, from Brownsville and everything that's the economy that's being led in Brownsville. But McAllen, we've got big manufacturing and high tech and all those things that will be announced, are being announced here at this time that you and I are talking. So on that end of it, maybe expand a bit more on your thinking on how McAllen, specifically you sitting on the city council, if you get a chance to sit on the city council, what do we need to do in order to attract more industry, um, abatements, maybe incentives? I mean, where is your mind when it comes to uh, actually fulfilling that goal, the Rioplex goal, which is regional, to
Right.
attract industry to the area? And McAllen has so much to offer.
Right. So I think you just said a key word, right, which is a regional approach, and I think
Mhm.
that's really important to keep in mind because it's a lot of the marketing has been one region, one voice, and I feel that when we work collaboratively,
Mhm.
that is the best way to be able to attract this new investment, new developments, but at the same time, from a city perspective too, we need to make sure that we have the workforce, and so in order to have the workforce, we need to continue making investments where they need to be made. For example, the city of McAllen has great partnerships with the ISDs, with the institutions of higher ed, and so I would be a strong supporter of continuing to invest in those types of programs and those types of organizations that are upskilling our residents and providing them those opportunities to become equipped with those skill sets and continue working collaboratively with the EDCs and also something I think that we've sort of moved away from and I think it is a good thing is not marketing our region with cheap labor, right? So I know historically that has been a problem where we've attracted certain industries or certain jobs, but our residents continue living in poverty. So I think looking forward, looking into the advancements in technology and new industry, keeping in mind that we have a very young workforce. The average age in McAllen is 33 years old. Taking that as a selling point and making sure that our residents have a fair chance and in competing for these high paying jobs.
I look forward to having more conversations with you. And as I mentioned, we spoke to one of the candidates a few days back. You'll get the first time a question on this on the McAllen ISD bond, which is
35.
335 million. Up or down on that one? You mentioned ISD and partnerships with ISD. Would you be in favor of that voter saying yes to that or no?
I would definitely be in favor. I
Mhm.
am, very pro public schools. I'm a product of public schools. And, back in 2015, I believe it was, a very similar bond was on the ballot for
Mhm.
290 some million dollars and it
Mhm.
didn't pass. And here we are now more than 10 years later. These are improvements that our schools, that our community really needs. It's making improvements in HVAC, roofing, campus expansion, CT expansion. This is an opportunity to, continue serving our families, our children, and making sure that they have a safe learning environment. And if it doesn't pass, I mean, these issues are not going to get resolved on their own, and we may be seeing ourselves in a similar situation 10 years from now with a $400 million proposal. So I definitely think it's an opportunity to make sure that we continue promoting a safe learning environment for our kids and make the investments, in a smart way.
Felida Villarreal is running for Place 5 McAllen. It's an open seat because our commissioner, Sebi Haddad, he decided to run for a state office. So there's three candidates, and Felida Villarreal will be on the ballot starting April 20th. Early vote. Election day will be Saturday, May 2nd. She's director of VIDA. She's also an accountant. Well, let's go back to the actual work that you would do if you're called to go work as Place 5 commissioner, which is the nitty gritty of the infrastructure. Tubes for water coming in, tubes for water going out, dirty water going out, roads, things like that. Are there some infrastructure items that are top of mind that maybe some of your neighbors or you yourself have experienced that need to be addressed in specifically Place 5 McAllen?
Yeah, so I think, those are some of the challenges that we see, citywide because of the growth that we're experiencing, right? So in a way, it's expected. What I've been hearing from residents is a huge, topic of concern is traffic, right? And now, more congestion and so forth. One of the things that I would really, like exploring more into is how we could leverage technology like artificial intelligence in producing smart traffic solutions. So, right, making sure that we can leverage this technology to perhaps better align the syncing of the traffic lights, making sure that we also have increased walkability in some of these areas of District 5, like Old Town, where people want to be, physically active and, being able to, promote a healthier lifestyle. But currently there are some areas of the district where that are lacking sidewalks. So making sure that, we prioritize those investments for our families, for our children, for our seniors, and for everyone overall.
Is there anything else you want folks to know in this initial conversation about yourself, the goals that you have for your campaign before I let you go?
So, from the very beginning, I came up with, 5 SMART goals to support District 5, starting with, what we've previously touched on, which is economic development, right? Making sure that we continue to attract quality jobs into our region. Infrastructure investment and public safety. I've had the privilege to, currently meet with the law enforcement and firefighter association, making sure that they have the resources to continue supporting the city's growth. Public safety, fiscal responsibility. Given my background, I definitely want to promote continued financial transparency, fiscal responsibility, but also someone that brings another perspective to the table, and that's seeking alternate sources of revenue. And so given my background, not only as a CPA, but coming from the nonprofit sector, I see that there's a lot of opportunity for continued grant research and securing grants as an alternate source of revenue to help fund some of these things. And lastly, community engagement. So I want to be a commissioner that is accessible and approachable to everyone, like I've said since day one. And so for anyone that's interested, in any questions or concerns that they may have, I would encourage them to please reach out to me. They can reach me directly at 956-827-3050.
She's running for Place 5, City of McAllen, CPA and Director of VIDA, Felida Villarreal. Come see us again. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanchez.